According to multiple reports, the Lakers want Anthony Davis, and same with the Boston Celtics. Great problems to have. But the question is, Stephen A., where should AD want to go?
He should want to go to L.A., to be honest with you, because if LeBron James is the greatest player in the world, and you pair him with somebody that Max Kellerman and myself both believe could very well end up being the greatest player in the world by next season. The reality is that you put that tandem together in the sport of basketball, that could definitely mean championships. Not to mention the fact that, when you look at the Eastern Conference and what have you, if Anthony Davis were to go to Boston, obviously there's Toronto to deal with this year. You don't know what's going to happen with Kawhi Leonard. Out west, Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors may stay together or whatever, or they may join forces with Kawhi Leonard as well. So you take all of those things into consideration. I just think Tinseltown being L.A., Anthony Davis, what he brings to the table, the fact that LeBron is supposed to be that dude, that guy, the greatest player in the world at this particular moment in time, and what it would require to get Anthony Davis to Boston. Because, listen, Boston has talked about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown both being gone, but you'd also have to include Kyrie Irving because of the Rose Rule. For those that don't know what it is, look it up. It's a complicated thing that involves basically Kyrie Irving would have to be moved in order for the Boston Celtics to acquire Anthony Davis. So you take all of those things into consideration, I would say, no, L.A. is the place for him to go.
Place for him to go, I hate to say it because L.A. ultimately is the place for him to go. But right now, the place is Boston. Boston, first of all, has the best chance to actually acquire him because they have the most valuable stuff to trade. Boston is also, I've taken the Raptors to get to the finals. If Boston, and what Stephen A. you were describing, the Rose Rule, you're talking about teams can designate a player. You cannot trade for two designated players. Mm-hmm. Kyrie is a designated player, and so is Anthony Davis. So the only way to acquire Anthony Davis is if you trade Kyrie for him. Therefore, you only have one of another team's designated players. And so, but even think about that. Think about subtracting Kyrie, adding AD. And it would have to be more than just Kyrie, I understand, but basically that. You're subtracting a guy. Kyrie's an excellent player. I do the star system, 1 through 5 stars. 5 stars MVP, 4 is an all-star, 3 is a starter, 2 is a rotation piece, and 1 is like a replacement level player. Kyrie's a 4.5-star player. He's not an MVP, but he's more than just an all-star. AD is a 5-star player. He's a perennial, game-for-game, MVP caliber player. And let's also remember, when Kyrie wasn't playing for the Celtics last year, they were moving the ball better. And you had more players who could kind of play with the ball because it wasn't sticking to one guy, like as it does with Kyrie. And they made the conference finals. Made a run. Now you're taking from that team Kyrie out. Remember, he wasn't on the team that made the playoff run. Yeah. And you're replacing him with Anthony Davis. I'm here to tell you, if the Celtics acquired Anthony Davis, they are getting to the finals this year. He's not a free agent next year. I'm telling you, next year they're winning the whole thing. So, and then Anthony Davis can sign wherever he wants, including the Lakers. Where should he want to play right now? It pains me to say it. It's like poison in my mouth. But the answer is Boston.
I'm not sold on it. First of all, you'd have to get rid of Kyrie Irving because you got to remember Kyrie Irving is approaching free agency. It's not just about the rule. Don't get me wrong. That prevents the trade from happening, because you got to swap those two players. So it leans towards it happening during the summertime as opposed to this season. But just talking strictly basketball here, I'm also of the mindset that if you're the Pelicans, you got to make sure somebody like Kyrie Irving will want to stay on board. And I know he wouldn't want to stay in New Orleans. So you got that going on. Number 2. The Western Conference is up for grabs outside of Golden State, obviously. You look at Golden State, yeah, they are who they are. But we've seen some vulnerabilities. We saw them a bit vulnerable against Houston in the conference finals. As you pointed out, Max, even though they ended up winning that series like I thought they would, primarily in part in some people's eyes because Chris Paul went down. But my point is we've seen some vulnerabilities. We see what happened with Draymond Green and Kevin Durant. Even though they've been winning games in the same breath, they haven't looked the same. And this is with Steph Curry having an MVP caliber season despite the games that he has missed. We look around the rest of the Western Conference, it appears incredibly vulnerable. We look at the East, we see Toronto. They are here. We see Milwaukee and Philly. They are coming. We wonder about Boston because they haven't really kicked it into gear yet, even though I believe they will. And we know what a stud Anthony Davis is. I'm just saying that anything that you could say about Boston, I could say about L.A. with LeBron LeBron and Anthony Davis on the
Guys,
same
one
roster
other thing,
this
though.
year.
Would you rather play for Ainge and Stevens, or would you rather be with Magic and Walton?
It's hard to take anyone over Ainge and Stevens. I like Magic and Walton a lot. Hard, and it's also hard to take Boston over LA just as a place to live if you have chances to win in both places. Everyone in the world, including everyone in Boston, would rather live in LA, whether they admit it or not. It's not LA's fault that it's warm there and the Pacific Ocean is right there and all that stuff, and Hollywood and all this kind of stuff. But Stephen A., and I hear what you say, when you have two MVPs on the same team, you can build around that very quickly. But what I'm saying is Boston, like, how does AD even get to LA? You have to, even if they could trade for him, they'd have to empty the cupboards. They'd have to empty the cupboards. Boston,
I agree with that. It's just a matter of
Boston could
preference in terms of
acquire
Anthony
AD.
Davis.
Yeah, but Boston could acquire AD and still have multiple all-stars on the team. You know, like Boston is just they have more to acquire him while keeping more. And so over the next year and a half, which is all that he has left on his current deal, he could win a championship in Boston next year and still sign in LA after that.
But it's no debate or even a discussion as it pertains to who has the most assets. Clearly, Boston has more assets. It seems virtually impossible for the Lakers to be able to put together a deal straight up that would allow the Pelicans to entertain the trade. Because you got to remember, it's not like Anthony Davis is approaching the last year of his deal. He is signed through this season and next season. So it's more likely that if he were to be moved, it would be this summer. It wouldn't be during this season. I can tell you that Rich Paul would love for Anthony Davis to be moved now as opposed to next season or whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is that it seems unlikely. I'm just saying that if you're Anthony Davis, I think it's a more preferable spot to be in LA.